Hello there. In this video lesson we're going to show you how you can create quite a wide range of Torus Knot Plus pattern bracelets similar to the one that's shown on the screen there. So if you start Fluid Designer up, first thing you need to do is to go to the bracelets folder, and if you scroll down somewhere near the bottom you'll find there's a lot of Torus Knot Plus bracelets already created, all of these patterns here. So these are some examples of what can be created, and we're going to look at these under 006. So if we drag and drop that onto the workspace, so that's an example of a Torus Knot pattern bracelet. And it's got an internal diameter of pretty much 65 millimeters. And if we look over in the help panel here, we'll see the instructions on how we can actually make this. And a couple of the important values are the P and Q values here. We've got P of 5 and Q of 42. Okay, so let's have a look at what we can do. I mean, there are some other values here: resolution and height and scale, etc. Okay, so let's highlight that first of all and press X on the keyboard and delete it. And I need to open up this toolbox panel here, so I can either press T on the keyboard to open and close it, or I could just click on the plus up there to open it. So what are we going to use? We're going to use a curve, and it's a Torus Knot Plus curve. And if I just zoom in on it, there's the default Torus Knot Plus curve, and as you can see it's quite small. And what is it made up of? Well, as you can see, it's going in and out of itself a couple of times, and it's going round a couple of times as well, 3 times in this instance. And that's what these P and Q values are here. Now if I change this to 5, you can see that that has an effect on the curve. And if I type in the value 47 here, you'll see it's going in and out of itself and looping lots and lots of times now. And that object is, of course, way too small. I mean, it's only 4.5 millimeters. We can't possibly print that. For a start, the thickness of it, the bevel of it, is almost 0. I mean, it's less than 0.1 of a millimeter, so that wouldn't 3D print anyway. So we need to resize this object. Well, if we look over in the window here, it says if we change the height to 20, this will give a depth to the bracelet of approximately 40, and it says see the Z dimension. Okay, so let's click in height here, and let's change it to 20. And as you can see, that's given the object some height, so we're starting to see a little bit more of what this is looking like. Now the Z hasn't actually gone up to 40 in this case, as it says over here, because there are other dimensions that we're changing as well, and there are other factors which affect this. But you can see as we change this value, it does change the height. So I'm going to stick to 20. I'm not sure whether that will be the final value we need, but what else can we change? Well, we can also change this value, the scale. Now if I hold down the left mouse button and drag the mouse to the right, you'll see my scale value is increasing numerically. But more importantly, visually you can see that the actual bracelet itself is increasing in size. And in the help panel it says 17mm gives approximately 65 millimeters diameter. Well, if I look over here, you can see X and Y. There's X and there's Y. Now this is to the outside of the object. So as you can see, it's approximately 65 millimeters. Now we are creating bracelets here, so we're not bothered too much about the exact values that we get here. Now what else do I need to change? Well, This is far too thin to print. If I click on the interactive ruler and measure this, you can see we're only 0.15 of a millimetre in thickness, twice this value effectively. Now, we really don't want to be printing anything that's less than a millimetre thick, so if we change this bevel value to 0.5, now you can see that's much better. If we measure this, you can see that's about a millimetre across. So really, this bevel value here, we don't really want anything smaller than 0.5. Now, again, if I zoom in on this, you can see it's a little bit kind of clunky, the shape of it. But if I change this value bevel resolution, well, let me first of all take it down to 0. And you can see when I take it down to 0, I've got a flat surface there and a flat surface there. So this is actually probably more or less a square cross section. As I increase the bevel, it becomes more and more smooth and more rounded. Now I can't increase it above 4. That's the smoothest surface I can get in terms of going around the object. But there is another resolution that I can change here in addition to bevel resolution. There's this value. Well, if I change this 12, if I increase it, you should see that the object is smoothing out again. Now as I change this, the number of faces will increase. Let me take the value right down. You'll see I get a very kind of square appearance to my bracelet, and I've only got 1,000 faces. Well, 1,000 faces is actually very small. If I increase this, let me increase it to 10. You'll see the faces go up to 10,000, so that's 10 times as many. If I increase it to 20, we're up to 20,000 faces there. And I'm going to take it up to 30, the resolution. And if I zoom in, you can see that's starting to look pretty smooth. And obviously, you've got to remember when you do print it, it's going to be that size. So you want a minimum value here of about 30 as the resolution. So you want the highest value here of 4. You want a minimum value of 0.5 here and a value of 30 here. Now if we wanted to change the height of this, we could do just by increasing that height value there. I'm going to take it back down to 20. It doesn't give me the 40 millimeters that it says over here. That's obviously a mistake on my part, the 40. But yeah, that's looking okay. I think I've got the wrong value. No, I've got the wrong value for Q. That's one of the things. I've entered 47 here. I should have had Q at 42. So let's see what happens when I take Q down. Now that's a rather irregular bracelet, but it might be a style that you like. And again, irregular sort of pattern, but again it might be a style you like. And again another irregular pattern and another irregular pattern. But notice what happens when I get to 42. I actually get quite a nice kind of fish type pattern there, and that's actually that bracelet there, the original one, in the opening screenshot. So we've got a pattern there at 42. If we leave that at 5 and increase this to 47, which is where I was a few minutes ago, again you notice we get a regular pattern, quite a nice appearance. And again, if we increase it, we get irregular, irregular, and then we get a regular pattern again. And all of these patterns are obviously slightly different. So you can play around with this until you get a pattern that you like. Now, I think if we go above 57, I don't think we'll start getting that kind of appearance again. I'm not quite sure. It just it does depend on other values that you've got here. Okay, so you can see the depth is now changing, and we are 10 to 8. We are nearly 40 millimeters there, as stated over in the help panel here. So let me take it right back down to, I think we were down at 42 originally. Okay, so there's our kind of default bracelet. Now if I change this bevel, if I change this value to 1, that again will change the appearance of my bracelet. It essentially thickens it up. Okay, I could however use a bevel object, which I haven't done in this case. I've been using the surface geometry. If I change this to 0.8 by 0.8 and zoom in, you see I've got a kind of square cross section now, 0.8 millimeters by 0.8 millimeters. I can go quite thick with a square section, or I can make it 1 by 2. So it's 1 millimeter there and then 2 millimeters in that direction. So that gives me a different appearance. Now all of these bracelets will in fact print. Okay, so when I select a bevel object over here, what I'm doing is overriding this value. So if I delete this, I will return to this bevel of 1, which will give me a thickness of 2 millimeters, because this is effectively the radius. So if I just delete that, it returns to this value, bevel depth of 1 millimeter, which is the same as this one here. Okay, so that's what you can do in terms of creating bracelets using these different patterns, using the Torus knot Torus knot plus curve feature. So lots and lots of different types of bracelet that you can create. Now when you're happy with the style that you've got, and I'll change that back down to 0.5, then remember, don't go to File and Save, always export. So you go to File, Export, export it as a wavefront object to the desktop. So it's a Torus knot at 65 millimeter diameter, 1 millimeter thickness. So you export that object to the desktop. Now if you notice at the top here, it does say faces 32,000. If you want to smooth this off even more, if I just press T to remove the toolbox and N to remove the properties panel there, if I wanted to make this even smoother, if I go to Tools, Object Tools and convert this to a mesh, you'll see it turns white. If I press the Tab key on the keyboard and press A on the keyboard to select all, I could go to W for the specials menu, and I could subdivide this object. Now what that means is, if I just zoom in here, you can see the faces that make up our Torus knot curved bracelet. If I press W and if I subdivide, each of these faces will be made smaller, and notice I'm up to 142,000 faces. So if I did that again, this value would be getting really pretty high, probably too much. But what I could do is I could do W and I could just smooth it off. So if there are any kind of imperfections in this, W and smooth, and I generally do it 3 times, W and smooth. Now we shouldn't really need it in this case, because this is the way this is built up. There shouldn't be any issues with regards to smoothness, but subdividing it just improves the quality of it. So press the Tab key to come out of edit mode, and then what you do is you go to File and export that. Okay, so that's a Torus knot plus bracelet in Fluid Designer for 3D printing. And that's the end of this video. Thank you.